Hello and welcome to Outside Views. Today we're discussing the topic of flight compensation in the UK after Brexit. It's a subject that has affected millions of travellers over the past few years, and yet it often doesn't get the attention it deserves. If you've ever experienced a delayed, cancelled or overbooked flight, you'll know just how frustrating it can be. For many years, passengers in the UK were protected by EU Regulation 261 of 2004, which set a global standard for flight compensation. But since the UK's departure from the European Union, the situation has become more complex. The UK has adopted its own version of the rules, but how do they compare to the protections passengers enjoyed under EU law? And what does this mean for the millions of travellers flying in and out of the UK every year? Before Brexit, the rules were, straightforward. EU Regulation 261 of 2004 applied to all flights departing from EU airports or operated by EU-based airlines. And this meant that whether you were flying from London to Paris, Berlin to Rome or Madrid to New York, you could count on a consistent set of rights. The regulation provided compensation ranging from €250 to €600, depending on the distance of the flight and the length of the delay. And short-haul flights under 1,500 kilometers were eligible for €250 in compensation. Medium-haul flights between 1,500 and 3,500 kilometers were eligible for €400. And long-haul flights over 3,500 kilometers were eligible for €600. And these amounts were designed to offset the inconvenience caused by flight disruptions and to hold airlines accountable. But financial compensation wasn't the only protection passengers enjoyed. The EU regulation also guaranteed what were known as care obligations. This meant that if your flight was delayed by several hours, the airline had to provide meals and refreshments. If the delay extended overnight, you were entitled to accommodation and transport to and from the airport. If a flight was cancelled, you could choose between a full refund or a rebooking on an alternative flight. And these protections applied regardless of whether the airlines was at fault, ensuring that passengers were always taken care of. So it's no wonder that Regulation 261 of 2004 became a benchmark for passenger rights worldwide. When the UK left the EU, many feared that these protections would be lost. After all, Brexit meant that the UK would no longer be subject to EU law, including this regulation. However, the UK government recognized the importance of these rights and decided to retain much of the EU framework. And the result is the UK's own version of Regulation 261 of 2004, which is overseen by the Civil Aviation Authority or CAA. Under UK law, passengers are still entitled to compensation for delays of 3 hours or more and for cancellations made within 14 days of departure. The compensation amounts remain similar to those under EU law, ranging from £220 to £520 depending on the flight distance. And this continuity has provided some reassurance to passengers, but there are key differences between the UK's rules and the EU's regulations. One significant difference is the scope of the rules. The UK compensation framework applies to all flights departing from the UK, regardless of the airline's nationality. In contrast, EU Regulation 261 applies only to flights departing from EU airports or operated by EU-based airlines. And this means that passengers flying from the UK to the EU are covered by UK rules, while those flying from the EU to the UK may fall under either EU or UK regulations depending on the airline. For example, if you're flying from London to Paris, your rights are governed by UK rules. But if you're flying from Paris to London, your rights depend on whether the airline is EU-based or UK-based. And this dual system has introduced a layer of complexity for passengers who must now determine which set of rules applies to their journey. Claiming compensation under the UK system is similar to the process under EU law. If your flight is delayed by 3 hours or more, or if it's cancelled within 14 days of departure, you may be entitled to compensation. And the first step is to check your eligibility and gather all the necessary documentation. And this includes your booking confirmation, boarding pass, and any communications from the airline regarding the disruption. And next, submit your claim directly to the airline, providing all relevant documents to support your case. And if the airline denies your claim without a valid reason, you can escalate the matter to the Civil Aviation Authority. And the CAA serves as an independent regulatory body, ensuring that all airlines comply with the law and that passengers' rights are upheld. In addition to financial compensation, UK rules preserve other important protections for passengers. Airlines are still required to provide care during long delays, and this includes offering meals, refreshments, and accommodation for overnight delays, as well as transport to and from the airport. Airlines are also obligated to inform passengers about their rights and any changes to flight schedules. And these provisions ensure a degree of continuity for passengers despite the UK's departure from the EU. However, the future of passenger rights in the UK remains uncertain. The government has often indicated that it may consider reforms to the current system, and some in the aviation industry have argued that the existing framework places an undue burden on airlines and have called for more flexibility in compensation rules. And these proposals include reducing compensation amounts or limiting eligibility criteria. On the other hand, consumer advocates warn that any weakening of passenger rights could lead to a decline in service standards and accountability. For travelers, staying informed is now more important than ever. The Civil Aviation Authority regularly updates its guidelines, and passengers should monitor their airline's policies for any changes. Taking out travel insurance is another smart move, as it provides additional protection in case of unexpected flight disruptions. And perhaps most importantly, passengers should familiarize themselves with both UK and EU regulations. Understanding which rules apply to your journey can help you navigate the system and ensure you receive the compensation you're entitled to. The differences between UK and EU rules highlight the broader complexities of Brexit's impact on everyday life. Before Brexit, passengers in the UK could rely on a single set of rules across the EU. Now they must navigate a fragmented system that varies depending on the origin, destination, and airline. And for airlines, this dual system has created additional administrative burdens, as they must now comply with two separate regulatory frameworks. And this has led to criticism from consumer groups who argue that the system should be streamlined to reduce confusion and ensure consistent enforcement. So in conclusion, flight compensation in the UK after Brexit remains robust, but the system is undeniably more complex than before. Passengers still have rights, but they must be proactive in understanding and asserting them. The UK's decision to retain much of the EU framework has provided continuity, but potential reforms could change the landscape even further. For now, travelers should stay informed, document any issues, and know how to navigate the claims process. Flight disruptions are never convenient, but knowing your rights can make all the difference here. So I say thank you for watching Outside Views again, and if you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Stay tuned for more in-depth analysis of Brexit's real-world impacts and the challenges it continues to bring. And if you want to see another video, the next one is right here in the end screen.